Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Marina Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Vivi Tai. V is an author, and she is the author of A Living True Alchemy, a transformational journey to freedom. And today, V and I are going to be talking on the topic, tapping into alchemy to transform your mind. So make sure you stay tuned because this is new content for me, and anything that helps us to transform our mind, is where I want to be, is where I want to talk. So welcome, V.
Hi, Mana. How are you?
Love your smile. So we're going to do great. Yes, awesome. Okay. Yeah, so let me give you a little bit, a short bio on V. Vivi Tai is a writer, truth seeker, healer, and fearlessly determined to live a free lifestyle regardless of others' opinions. In her book, Living Through Alchemy, V seeks to dispel the myths behind alchemy, shining an illuminated light on this fascinating esoteric practice. A culmination of a lifetime of soul searching, this guide blends the field of art and science, painting a compelling picture of how alchemy manifests in our daily lives. Living her life purpose, V helps others to find their path of freedom to live their authentic selves, because only then can we live a fulfilled life of happiness. Now, V is going to talk to us about her life as a freedom. Right now, she's speaking to me from her camper with her dog. And so, yeah, we are going to be embarking on a journey of freedom and, spirituality. So, V, you have a very interesting story. So let's start out by telling us what exactly is alchemy, and tell us your story of how you came to understand this esoteric practice.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, our life is quite spontaneous. And today I'm in the cover. It's like every day is like a mystery. You don't know what to expect. So I came across alchemy. This happened probably 7 years ago, and the first thing that alchemy that appeared in my life was the book The Alchemist from Paulo Coelho. So that book actually inspired me to embark on my nomadic life. Because it's the Santiago, in that book, Santiago loved to travel and he wanted to travel the world. And it during that time I was in a very dark phase of my life. I was very unhappy about my job, and everything turned out in my life, and I questioned my life existence. I question why do I exist? What's my life purpose? Because I was so unhappy, and every day going to work, I was like, it felt like carrying a rock on my shoulder, and I was like, am I supposed to live like this? Why did I go through 10 years of school and got very high degree, got a very prestigious job in one of the best hospitals in the US, but I was so depressed and so unhappy and stressed all the time. And so at that time, I came across this book, but I didn't understand anything about alchemy at that time. So all I knew was that, it's a really cool story about traveling. I didn't know that there's so much esoteric meanings that embedded in this book. Not until last year that I was writing a book about my van life. So the book was originally about how to live the van life.
Okay. All right. Yes.
So then I was working with, I had a guide to help me through the writing process. And so they was asking me why do you want to live in a van? And like everything, like, then when they keep asking me questions and questions, and when we go deeper into the nomadic life and the van life, I realized that it has so much to do with the spiritual journey, because I wanted to live in a van because I didn't want to go back to the corporate life. I wanted to have more time for myself, to learn who I am, follow my passion, and um, and just see what else would come up from there, because when I was back in the US, so I'm here in Canada now, but when I was back in the US, I felt so lost. I didn't know who I was, and I just keep questioning what's my life purpose. And so that's the reason why I changed my lifestyle, and I wanted to live very simply, um, very low cost, and mainly focus on what I love to do the most. And I just follow that passion and see where it lead me from there, because that's the biggest thing I learned from the book, The Alchemist. The first thing I learned from that book is just to follow your heart. And so that's how it led me here. And during that the writing process of the book, so I stumbled upon this show. So everything happened like in like synchronicity, right?
Hey
And
girl, that was my last podcast. Synchronicity, there's no coincidence in life. So
there's
awesome.
no coincidence. It has to happen
That's
that
right.
way. And
Yes,
when you
okay.
know that you are aligned, like you're gonna start seeing so many synchronicities that happen around you. And so when you're in tune with that, you're gonna pick up a lot of information. So when I was writing the book, I came upon this show called Mystery Teachings, presented by Teresa Bullard on Gaia Network. And so that's how I got to learn alchemy in the in the philosophy and the ancient wisdom behind the alchemy. Because in the show, she actually tied the meaning between tarot and alchemy, and how different when you travel along the mandala wheel of tarot. And I'm talking about the original tarot, right?
Okay.
The original tarot card, um, the really old ancient tarot card.
Okay.
So when she explained the imagery in the tarot card and how we travel from the card 0 to card number 21, we travel through the stages of alchemy. And like it exploded in my mind, and I just have so many light bulbs, and I was just like, this is the circle that I have gone through, and I understood everything that happened to me in the US, and why everything started to fall down for me, like, because I had a very materialistic life, and it's all of that crumble, and that explain why I had to go on a different direction in my life.
That's
So
awesome. Yeah.
it helps me to put all the pieces together, and it get me to understand the path that I went on, and all the synchronicities that happen in order to guide me to be on the right track of my life. And then I understood the Alchemist book. um the key point that I learned from the Alchemist book was exactly what I needed at that time to guide me on the right track and to
Okay.
go through the stages of alchemy.
So somebody that's listening is not picking up what alchemy means. So give us a definition of it, and then we can explain it, because, you first said that the first book that you read from Santiago, he used alchemy as travel, but then it's also an esoteric practice, and it's also spiritual. So what is the definition of it?
Okay, so you know, like as we all was learned that alchemy is like turning lead into gold, right? So
What was
that's
that? Turning lead into gold?
lead into gold. Yes,
Okay.
yes. So
Okay.
that's the meaning that we were told to understand. But there's so much deeper that going on behind it, because basically it's a metaphor. Turning lead into gold is like turning something heavy and the impurity into something precious, uh, into something valuable. And
I love
if
it.
you look
I
at
love
our
it.
life, if you look at our life,
Yeah.
we when
Mhm.
we are born, we are precious that way. As our soul level, we are precious that way. But through the the process of growth through life, we carry so much of indoctrination from society, from our families, and other negative beliefs from other people. So the process of alchemy helps you to realize all these wounds, so that you can let go of the impurities and transform yourself into something valuable, which is your higher self.
That,
So that
that's beautiful. It's almost like turning coal into diamonds. Same kind of thing. Right. Okay.
yes, yes,
Right. Okay.
exactly.
Mhm.
Um, so, but there's like, in order to understand the process of alchemy, you need to understand the stages of how it transmutes. So, alchemy, by definition, is the transmutation and transformation.
Mhm.
So, you have to transmute from through the stages. That
Mhm.
transmutation is through the stages, and
Mhm.
through that process, you transform into a different person or a different form, just like the caterpillar
I was
that
just gonna say
transforms
the
into
caterpillar into butterfly.
the
Yes.
butterfly.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's two
Yes.
different
Mhm.
forms, right? But it has to
Okay.
go through the stages, like staying in the cocoon, and
Right.
so the stages where it's staying in the cocoon, that's the transmutation. So the seven stages of alchemy are the calcination and the dissolution, the separation, the conjunction, distillation, and coagulation. Now, so let me explain a little bit about each stage. So the calcination is really fascinating, because when you dig into it, it's gonna like open up, like you understand is like the key of the universe, how the universe actually operates, because the stages of alchemy connect you to your seven chakras. That's how you heal through all your chakras, and also connect you to the seven laws of the universe once you understand and once you go through the process. And that's something that I explain in my book. Now, in the ancient wisdom, they said that once you travel through and the stages of alchemy, the last stage, the stage before the last stage is the third eye. So that's connect to the eye of Horus. That that's
Mhm.
that's what the eye of Horus actually mean, the
Mhm.
pineal gland, and that's where it's open up the portal to the spiritual realm, where
Mm.
you travel up to the higher stage.
Good
Now, but
stuff.
that
Good
is,
stuff. I mean, good stuff. I mean, everything that you're saying, I'm able to understand what you're saying. Again, I'm into the chakras. I do the energy work with my chakras. I am Deepak. I'm actually listening to Deepak Chopra's book right now about the seven spiritual laws and the law of attraction, and all that. So everything you're saying is connecting with me. So I'm hoping
yeah,
that is connecting to my audience as well. So keep going. Good stuff. All right.
yeah. So, but I want to clarify that. So there's many layers of alchemy as well. For instance, I don't know if you're familiar with the seed of life, the picture, the seed of life. So it's
No.
basically has so it has different circles. So seven circles make one
Mm.
big circle. So
Okay.
this is how the universe operates, because it's also connected to the sacred geometry. It's also connected to the tree of life, everything. So when you understand this core concept, you'll be able to understand like so much more about how the universe operates. And not just that, you also understand the law of attraction. Now, so,
Nice.
so the
So let
law,
me ask you something. You're saying the tree of life, is that the same as the tree of knowledge that was in the Garden of Eden? Is that what you're talking about? No?
no,
No.
I'm
Okay.
in the
Okay.
Kabbalic tree of life.
Okay. All right.
So,
All right. So I'm trying to connect my knowledge so far, but anyway, keep going. I've never heard of that one before, so this is new for me. Okay.
okay, so to go back,
Mm.
when you go through the stages of alchemy, and it's a very natural process. It happens to everyone because the universe wants to change and transform. Like
Yes.
change is the only constant, right? So it is
Right.
alchemy. So everything
Right.
has to transmute, and it is the universe has to it wants to perfect itself, and that's why we all have to go through the process of transmutation. So the process of alchemy helps the universe, and we are part of the universe, so of course we are being affected by it as well. So that's just looking at the bigger scale. Looking at us is the smaller scale. That is what um the stages affect us at the emotional level, and that's why we have triggers. We have challenges that we have to go through. So a lot of time we think that all these challenges are like happen like to bring us down, but that's actually not true. You may just go through some stage of alchemy, and that it happens to purify your energy body, because when as we carry so much like negative beliefs and so much uh um indoctrination from our society, like these beliefs are also energy, right? These thoughts are
Yes.
also
Right.
energy, and
Right.
so when you
Right.
have a lot of negative thoughts, it brings you down.
Right.
So as you understand the work of energy, you do energy
Oh,
healing, so
I
you
do.
understand the energy, right?
I
So
do energy, and I try to clean my energy every day when I walk. And I'm very, because energy is definitely, you talk about the law of attraction. If you want good things to happen to you, you have to feel good. You have to have positive energy, because even when you have negative energy, you're attracting negative things to you. But I want to circle back before we get too far
yeah,
away from the start. You said that you felt like lead, and you were in the corporate world, and you felt like lead, and then you discovered alchemy, and you went through the stages of alchemy and transmuted your energy from heavy to gold. So connect the dots there before we go any further. How
I
did
know,
you how
I
did
know.
you do that?
So that's the stage that I explain in my book. So the first stage is that the calcination, right?
Right.
So that's where, and it hits really hard. For me, it hit really hard because I felt like I hit the bottom. At that time, I was in the US, and I was already in the US for 12 years. I came to the US at a very young age, and I was there. I came as an exchange student, and I went to universities, and I to grad school, and then I was working there for several years. So to me, it was like home.
Mhm.
Um, is like I was very attached to the country, very attached to the place. So I didn't want to leave, but because I was on H-1B visa worker,
Mhm.
so my stay in the US have to depend on my employment. Because if I lose
Mhm.
my job, I would have to leave the country, which I
Right.
did.
Okay.
And so at that time, my biggest fear was the fear of shame.
Mhm.
Um,
Having to go back
to
home.
to go back home
Right.
and had nothing. I
Right.
literally lost everything. Now, so I was explaining in my book that I had three choices at that time. Either I could stay illegally, which
Right.
nobody would know,
Right. Right.
or
Right.
I could get married. I could get like a full marriage and
Right.
a fact marriage to stay, which a lot
Right.
of people do.
Right.
Or I could go back home and just face my fear, um, and see what's next, what's next to come up. And so I was talking about the logics between all the different choices, and I was like, I couldn't go with the other two choices, that I had to get married. I wasn't ready to get married. I was young and I wasn't ready to get married. And I was like, I was working at one of the top hospital in the US and I had an Ivy League degree. I'm like, I don't want to work under the table for the rest of my life, like living there
Right,
as
right.
for
So
immigrants,
right,
you know?
right,
It's
right,
like,
right, right.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, that didn't really make sense to me. And so I took a leap of faith and I decided that I wanted to go back. And at that time, I just felt like I didn't have the freedom I wanted, like living in this country. It wasn't exactly what I thought it would be. And and my dream was to travel the world.
Right,
So I thought if I could, if even if I would stay and I would continue to do all of that, even if all of that worked out fine, like would I be able to still be the nomad and travel like
right.
I wanted? And so I gave up everything. I sold everything. So I went back home in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was the hardest thing that I have ever done in my life.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
so, but the reason the Book of the Alchemist happened to me at that time is to guide me that you need to listen to your heart. Like, because at that time I asked myself, not only that it reignited my passion for traveling, but I also asked myself, what is it that I really want to do right now? And I said, I want to travel. I just wanted to travel. Um, so so I was like, if I go back home, maybe I can just travel around Southeast Asia. Maybe I
Right.
can just, you know, and
Right, right.
I would have more freedom there to travel around Southeast Asia, which I did. And
Okay.
I had the best time of my life. I kid you not, I had the best time of my life traveling around Asia. So when I faced that fear, I realized that that's the part of letting go. You have to face it in order to let it go, but not without a lot of emotions. Now, I didn't understand that was the process I had to go through is the
Mm,
alchemical process at that time.
okay.
I had no
Right,
clue. All I did was just to follow my passion.
right,
That
right.
that's all I knew at that time.
And make the right choice. You know, one of the reasons I love this show, and one of the reasons I love energy and the law of attraction and all these different things and talking about coincidences is because I come here and I talk to my guests and a lot of times, you know, we have a conversation and what I thought that we were going to talk about, the conversation morphs into something else. You know what I mean?
I know.
I wrote a book about my immigration journey, my immigration story. And, you know, just this morning, I was listening to the book called Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. And he was in the part where, as a monk, they told him to go deeper and figure out what his fears were. And of course, he was saying, I don't fear anything. And I was saying the same thing, I don't fear anything. But I was going through my meditation and I went deep and I thought, what was the last time I feared something? What is it that I fear? And then I went back to a time when I really lived in fear because, you know, my story was not as dramatic as yours. And I'm Canadian and I wanted to come to America because it's the American dream. And there was a point where I was living illegally. It wasn't really illegally because I'm a Canadian, but
Hmm.
I felt that I was living illegally, whatever
Yeah.
my brain told me. And I had these dreams that they will come and come and knock on my door in the middle of the night, throw me in a trunk and deport me. It was an irrational, illogical fear. But this morning, like, you know, what Think Like a Monk was saying is, why did you fear that? What is it that you really do fear? Because, you know, I'm not going back to someplace like Afghanistan, or I'm not going back to, you know, there's nothing wrong with Canada.
Mhm. Yes.
A lot of people will feel that Canada is a better country than the United States. So
Yeah.
why did I go through that? So I haven't figured it out yet. But my point is that
Yeah.
it was very important to me to be in the United States And I went through, I made some of those wrong decisions like you. I got married too, and all that kind of stuff, and the marriage didn't work out and things like that. I did those because it was very important to me. Why? I don't know. I have to figure out why it is important to me. But listen, you're talking a lot of things about transformation of the mind. This is what this show's about. And you're starting at that first stage you're talking about of letting go, right?
Yeah.
So I don't understand by your accent what the words are, but of course, you need to send that to me, the stages, because I'm not picking it up properly. And I have a blog, so I'm going to have a transcript of our conversation. But those are very important to know the actual words and to see them. So after we have finished this interview, I need you to email that to me so that I can put it in my blog. But anyway, yeah, so your story and mine are very similar. And of course, we didn't know that before, we started talking about alchemy. And look where we're ending up to, an immigration story, right? And talking about fear and letting go and things like that. So that's beautiful. Okay.
Yeah. But all of that is actually still within the subject of alchemy, So that's why I thought it's so relevant, and it's so essential that people need to know this, because like you said, your show is all about transform your mind. So now the beauty of alchemy is that once you understand all of these stages, then you'll be able to have a different perspective about your life. So when you have a different perspective, then you have different thoughts. You look at things differently. So you have different thoughts. So once you have different thoughts, you have different actions. When you have different actions, you have you would do things differently, so that that will create different reality.
Yes.
And so through this process of letting go and purifying, you will start to transform your mind as well, because it transforms your energy and your mind clearly. And so that's how we gain more freedom and peace.
So how did you get back to Canada? Because there's no difference in Canada and the US. Tell us that story. Now you tickled my curiosity.
So I applied for my immigration to Canada because I didn't feel like staying in Vietnam was a place for me. I'm so different from my family. I'm kind of like a really, really black sheep from my family. They're very traditional, very conservative. And I just love to be alone, and I love to do solo traveling. And so I didn't feel like being in Vietnam was the place for me. I was like, I wanted to go somewhere else. And like part of me is still yearning that life that back in the US, but at the same time, I don't want to be back in the US. So I'm like, maybe I should aim somewhere else. And so my friend told me, why don't you just go to Canada? And I was like, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah. Canada's immigration law is much less severe than the United States. So yes.
And they're very, very organized too. It's not, and it makes a lot of sense too. And it's not like they let anyone come into the country. Like I had to go through a very intense process.
But you didn't have to get married.
My history.
But you didn't have to get married.
On the records of my life, they know on the records of my life, right? So it's not at all easy. And it took a really long time to go through that immigration process. Like it's long for me, but it's relatively short for some other people, because sometimes you have to wait like 4 or 5 years. It took me like only 1.5 years. So it's relatively short for me.
1.5 years is not a long time. So you need to change that thought.
That's what I'm talking when I heard people like immigration time that they had to wait. It's like that's just really long. So I guess it was meant to be that way. And
I also want to say that's I want to put a plug here, is that's when I don't know your stages. We're only at stage 1. Obviously, we wouldn't have time to go through all the stages, but letting go and following your heart, cleaning up your energy, you actually attract the things to you that you want. So
Yeah.
when you hold on tight to stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's when you feel like lead, you feel heavy, and you don't go anywhere, right?
Exactly.
In order for you to float like a balloon, you've got to have a free energy. So
Yes.
you made the choice to go back home, and it ended up being the right choice because now you're living your dreams, right?
Exactly,
So,
exactly. So that's why when I look back, I was like, I think I understand the secret of the law of attraction and how it
yes,
works now.
yes,
Because my yearning was that I wanted the freedom to travel the world, and I couldn't do that in the years ago. I was holding on so much into the
corporate
materialistic,
world, right,
right?
right. You're
So, but
working.
when I let that go, I was like, and I feel more free. So when you want more freedom, you have to let all the things that hold you
Go,
back. Right?
go,
But not
right.
just that, like I exercise my freedom. I didn't feel like entirely free when I was in Vietnam because like I was restricted by my family. They're so conservative. They constantly question me whenever I go travel by myself. They're like they look at me like I'm very weird. And so, but I'm like, I want to feel that freedom. And so I asked myself at that time, right? What is it that make me feel free? What is it that make me happy? And again, the answer was like traveling for me. And so I was like, I'm just gonna exercise that freedom regardless I have it or not. Like I would just utilize whatever I have.
So do you
In
work
whatever
now?
way.
Do you work? I know that you live in your van and you have the nomadic life and you're free, but do you work? What do you do?
So right now I'm doing a lot of promotion and marketing for my book. So that's consumed
Okay,
a lot of time right now.
okay,
Um, but that and beyond that, I'm planning to have some other projects.
okay,
So I transitioned, like I used to work when I was in Vancouver.
okay,
But then because of the pandemic hit, so that's another
okay,
story, right?
okay, right,
I
right.
decided I'm gonna let that go because I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Okay,
I wanted to come
okay,
to Canada to be an entrepreneur. I
yeah,
didn't
okay,
want to live the corporate life anymore. That's why I live
right,
in a van.
okay.
And so, but I wasn't.
And I also want, before I forget, when you were talking your story, now I didn't know the show that you talked about, and I didn't read that book, but if you haven't watched it yet, you should watch the movie Nomadland because it's exactly your story. Have you watched that? She won an Academy Award for that movie.
I haven't watched that movie.
Have you heard of
No,
it?
no, I haven't heard it.
Okay, well, write that down. Nomadland. It's about a woman that lived in her van because I think she was fired from her corporate job, and she did it because that's all she did. But it was such a good movie that she won an Academy Award for her performance. So watch
Oh
that.
yeah, okay. So hopefully I can turn my life into a movie one
Yes,
day.
right, right,
Um,
right. Mhm.
but so before the pandemic hit, I was kind of like just kind of tempting it out. I like one foot in, one foot out. I wasn't sure that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Um, I because I didn't hate my job. I actually kind of enjoyed it. I love working with people and I love coffee. I was selling coffee machine at that time. And I had a fabulous time with that job. So I'm like, I'm not ready. Like
Mhm.
I don't feel like I want to do anything else differently. Um, and it was still flexible enough that give me enough time to travel. So everything worked out well for me in Vancouver until like pandemic hit. And so I lost it temporarily, but they wanted me to come back. But then like during that time, I just asked myself, like, um, I haven't really accomplished what I really come here to do in
Right,
Canada, which is to be an entrepreneur. Like,
right,
do I still want to go back to that job,
right,
and forget about my dream?
right.
So I didn't see me growing in that direction.
No,
You know,
no,
I
no.
didn't see the future for it, and so I'm like,
Working for yourself and being an entrepreneur and putting your dreams and goals into your business and not someone else's business. If you don't need the paycheck, and obviously you don't, because you cut down on your expenses and living as cheap as you can, then that's definitely the way to do it. you know. But I want to get to something else that you talked about, which is spiritual alchemy. And you talked about once we get through the 7 stages and we get to you talked about the stage where the third eye, which is the, you know, what is it? The second chakra, I think it is.
The eye of the sixth chakra.
Right, the 6th chakra. Right, I was
the third
from
eye,
the
the
top and the
sixth chakra.
bottom. Right, yeah, the 6th chakra. Right. Yeah. So you know, so that's basically, you know, stepping into the realm. So talk to us about that briefly, because we're almost, yeah, we're having such a great conversation. So we're just
Yeah, I know.
eating up the time. Right.
So when you I haven't actually experienced that yet, but so I cannot say it from my own experience, but I can say it like from exactly what I know and what I learned so far. So when you go through this process of purifying, right, is you travel through the 7 chakras, and that is the Kundalini energy that rises up, because you open up, you know, when you open up all your chakras, the energy is lighter, so it's open up the light, the passage for the Kundalini energy to rise through the chakra. And so at the 6th stage, that is at the state around your third eye, that is your energy center. So now of course, we have blockages in our third eyes. We all have blockages in our chakras, right? So the healing at this stage of alchemy is to heal the blockages. Like, what is it? What energy, what events, or what beliefs is it that actually block this energy center? And that may be the challenge that you have to go through to understand it and figure that out. And so when you're able to release this blockage, it be able to help you to open up your third eye, which is the pineal gland. Now that would not like happen naturally. As far as I learned, you would have to do the third eye meditation in order to help open up, to activate the pineal gland, to access the other realm. Now, so if you see the caduceus, I don't know if you're familiar with caduceus symbols, like the 2 snakes.
I'm not, but I'm familiar with Kundalini, and I do Kundalini meditation because it's like they're saying it's like a snake that goes up your nervous system. And when I practice it, I practice thinking of the energy moving from my 7th chakra and going all the way up to my 1st chakra. So, but I have a problem with my third eye too. I can't see nothing.
But that takes a lot of practice as well. But our energy center is like there's so much blockages. Like we cannot say that at one time, at one challenge, it's gonna like heal everything. Now, I would say that everyone is at different stage in their life. Everyone have different journey, have different challenges. And so how that alchemy stages affect them is very different for individuals. So you may have to go through like multiple circles of alchemy in order to get there, to access the spiritual realm. Or you can just like go through this stage. You may get to the coagulation, but it may look very different than to some other like highly evolved individuals already have access to the other stage, because you may have to go through multiple cycles of it. And so that process of alchemy is like forever evolving, forever growing. So it's because it goes along with the universal expansion. And so, but that is the ultimate point, to have that access to the spiritual realm, so that because at the coagulation, you would have to bring it down and apply it to earth, basically bringing heaven to earth. So that pineal gland gives you that access, that portal, in order to do your spiritual work. And once you get there, you would have to go back and bring the service and help other people. In order to get everyone to get back home, like to go home and get to find that freedom and that peace, because we all have to return to our spiritual home at some point, right?
Right. Oh my gosh, this is a beautiful conversation. Awesome. I learned a lot, so I'm very interested in getting some extra notes on here. so that I can put on my blog. So remember to do that. So, all right. So tell our listeners how they can get a copy of your book. Do you do any coaching on this, or how they can connect with you on social media?
So people can find my book on Amazon. It will soon be available everywhere, but for now it's on Amazon. And so the title of the book is Living Through Alchemy, a transformational journey to freedom. And they can also go to my website called livingthroughalchemy.com, and that's where they learn more information about the book. And I have my book trailer on there. And they can also download a free copy as well for the first chapter. So the first chapter, I walk people through like all the meaning of alchemy and all that. And I don't do coaching yet, because honestly, this is actually a lot of work with like the writing the book and the publishing and all that. And I plan to have more books coming out in the future. And also because I want to actually finish all my stages of alchemy. So I want to focus on my own personal growth first before I get there. Then I'll be able to guide other people. But that's the plan. That, like, I feel like I'm heading toward that direction at some point. You know?
Well, I can definitely tell that, you know, this is good stuff, you know, like I'm not just saying that, but, you know, regardless of the title you put on it, whether it's called alchemy or what, but getting through the stages of life so that you can, you know, connect to the universe, you know, bring heaven down to earth, or whatever you want to call it, you know, attract the law of attraction to you, all those things. If you're blocked, if you're stuck, you have negative energy going through you, if you're just, you know, like 95% of the people in the world just, you know, reacting to things in life and not being proactive about anything, whatever you want to call it, people need coaching to go through that. So I can tell from our conversation that you've lived this, you've gone through it, and you can definitely help others. So if you want to become an entrepreneur, this is a good space. This is a good space. Yes.
Yeah.
Good space.
Sometimes it can feel really, all the work can feel really overwhelming for me. So I'm taking one step at a time to get there. But definitely, I originally, before I write a book, I actually wanted to get into the coaching. I wanted to be a coach. But after writing this book, I'm like, I want to finish this.
Right.
And then
you're right. You know, it's much better to be coaching when you reach the end, you know what I mean? So because you can actually tell people what the end looks like, you know what I mean? If you're still going through the process, then you're right, it's probably not the right time. But you know, you're writing books, you're writing books, and you're journaling your transformation, and that's beautiful. So I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, thoroughly enjoyed your story. You know, we have a couple of, you know, if we were to have, you know, some notches, then we connect on a couple of those things.
We did,
we definitely did. So awesome. So this was a very, very enjoyable interview. I love learning new things. I love when you're talking about synchronicity, like I'm just talking this morning. I mean, I was just learning this morning about deepest fear and why it is that you fear things. You don't have no clue why you fear them, right? And that's work that you got to do to figure out why you fear things.
I learned a lot about that through this process as well. And the thing is, like, all like when I go through this process, I realize the lessons kind of just come to me. And that when you sit with you be able to understand it. And recently is like the fear of not being good enough for me and overcoming self-worth. So that took a lot for me to like come out in social media and to being public, you know, to talk about my work and my book. So it's like I haven't written it down yet, but it's like the process going through the fear of not being good enough and to overcome your self-worth.
Right.
There's so many beautiful lessons around it. I can't wait
Yeah.
to share with my readers and my viewers.
Right.
So, but I totally understand with you, like when you go through this and you learn on your fears, for me, I realized, oh, they actually my friends now, and like I don't
Well,
feel like my friends are holding me back anymore.
that was basically the, you know, the purpose of Jay Shetty walking us through that, because once you understand your fear, then you can use it to help you get to where you want to go, because you have to understand it. You know what I mean? It's so it's very important, because, you know, why is it that you fear this thing? You know, it's illogical.
Yeah, right. It's like it's logical and you don't understand it, but
Yeah.
you can only understand why. But it helps you. It helps you in some way to get where you want to go. And when I realized that, I was like, I was fascinated because I hated the part of myself of being fearful for that, you know. And I was very judgmental about that part of myself. And
Right.
so, but when I realized that, oh, I feel like softer, I feel like I could overcome it easier, and I
Well, you,
understand, and it's
you
like
but you faced it though. You went back home.
yeah,
So you faced
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Very few people would do that. Very few people would do
yeah,
that. They'll be controlled with the fear, and they will not, and then they'll be forever unhappy. They're forever
exactly,
unhappy, because here you were in the United States making all kinds of money, and you're not happy. And that happens a lot. I mean, one of my very first coaching clients came into me and told me the same thing. She was very, very happy. I mean, sorry, she was, you know, she had a great marriage, she had a son, she was in the corporate world making all kinds of money, you know, had her degrees, but she felt unfulfilled. And it happens
hmm
all the time. Felt
hmm
unfulfilled. That's why she came into the coaching, because she figured that she needs to find her purpose. Right. So
yeah, yeah,
awesome. Well, yeah, it happens. And, you know, it's not just the people that are unfulfilled because they haven't um, done what they're supposed to do. Most of the time it comes from people that are at the top of their game, right?
hmm
Making all
hmm
kinds of money, you know, have a marriage, you know, have whatever, big fancy house. And then they're
yeah,
still
yeah,
unfulfilled inside, because they haven't
exactly,
connected to their spiritual self, and they
yeah,
have not connected to their soul. So all
yeah.
right, well, listen, we're definitely fresh out of time. It has been a very enjoyable interview, V. So
My pleasure too.
I want to thank you guys for tuning in to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life. Today we talked about transforming your mind and your life through the topic of alchemy. It's just a word, right? It's, you know, a label, but you know that we can all transform our minds by our thoughts. You know, V said something there that it's one of my mantras, and it comes from Wayne Dwyer. It's change the way you think about a thing, and the thing you think of will change. You know, she didn't say it like that, but that's basically what she meant. So that's what I wish for you guys. So until next time, namaste.
Thank you.